There is a fan in a Chinese museum. It is small, folded, made of white silk stretched over slender ribs of bone. On the silk, someone painted peach blossoms. They are beautiful, soft pink petals, a branch, a few falling buds. Tourists stop. Guides say, this is the most famous fan in all of Chinese theater. The peach blossom fan. Here is what the guides usually leave out. The blossoms were not painted from flowers. They were painted from blood. A woman's blood. She was a singing girl in the pleasure quarters of Nanjing. Her name was Xiangjun. And sometime in the chaos of a fallen dynasty, she struck her own head so hard that she bled onto the silk, and a man she admired picked up a brush and turned the stain into a garden. That is the whole machine in one object. A woman is hurt. A man makes it beautiful. And suddenly the hurt is no longer hers. It belongs to art. It belongs to the dynasty. It belongs to everyone except the person who bled. This is the story of how Xiangjun's pain became a footnote to a war she never started, and how, 400 years later, we are still very good at the same trick. Let's start with what the old story said she was. A courtesan. A singing girl. A pretty thing in a silk dress who caught the eye of a young scholar named Hou Fangyu. The kind of woman the moralists love to warn against. Distraction, temptation, the soft ruin waiting at the edge of every serious man's ambition. And when the southern Ming court collapsed, when the last flickering regime of the fallen dynasty fell apart in a matter of months, the familiar explanation surfaced, the one this series keeps finding. The court was seduced. Morale rotted. Pleasure quarters poisoned the men who should have saved the realm. You have heard this shape before. Zhao Fian, the dancing girl who supposedly emptied a throne. Lu Rushi, the poet they called a mistress who drowned a dynasty. Dong Xiaowan, the quiet wife they rewrote into an emperor's heartbreak. Li Xiangjun is the same accusation wearing a different dress. But here is what makes her case different, and worse. With the others, the machine reached for a type, the seductive woman, and pasted it over a real person. With Li Xiangjun, the machine did something more intimate. It took her actual blood, her actual loyalty, her actual sacrifice, and it rearranged them into a story where she is a symbol and the men around her are the protagonists. She is not erased. She is used. So let's take the real woman out of the legend and look at her. Li Xiangjun lived in Nanjing's Qinhuai district, the riverfront entertainment quarter, the same world as Lu Rushi and Dong Xiaowan. She was a performing artist. She sang, she danced, she entertained guests in a society that refused to let women of her class be anything but ornaments. That is the first thing to say plainly. She was an entertainer in a rigid hierarchy. Not a seductress. Not a power behind a throne. A working artist whose value was measured by how pleasing she could be. Enter the men. Hou Fangyu was a young literatus, part of a reform-minded scholarly faction, the Revived Society, aligned with the old Donglin critics who had spent decades fighting court corruption. Through a friend, he met Li Xiangjun. By the norms of their world, they became a couple. She was loyal to him, and he to her, as much as that unequal world allowed. Then the factional machine turned on them. A powerful courtier named Yuan Deshang had been purged by the very faction Hou belonged to. Yuan wanted revenge. And the easiest way to wound a young reformer was through the woman he loved, to force a marriage between Li Xiangjun and a rival official's relative, humiliating Hou and binding the singer to the enemy camp. Li Xiangjun refused. She is said to have resisted so violently, smashing her head against a wall or a pillar, that she bled, and the blood fell onto the fan Hou carried. That is the moment the legend loves. But notice who is making the decisions. Yuan Deshang sets the trap. The male factions fight through her body. Hou is the one whose honor is at stake. And Li Xiangjun's only power is the power to refuse, and to hurt herself doing it. She is not the author of this story. She is the chessboard. The Southern Ming itself lasted barely a year. Factionalism ate it from the inside. The reformers and the old guard spent their energy destroying each other while the northern conquest advanced. When the regime fell, the usual suspects were blamed, and a singing girl who had refused a forced marriage became, in the retelling, a symbol of loyalty and a trophy of the lost cause all at once. Now we reach the part that should disturb us most. After she bled on the fan, a man, the painter Yang Longyu, a friend of the circle, picked up a brush and turned the bloodstains into peach blossoms. The white silk became a garden. The wound became decoration. And that single act is the entire thesis of this series, compressed into one object. Because the moment the blood became blossoms, the story stopped being about Li Xiangjun's pain and started being about male genius. Look how beautifully he painted. Look how the tragedy is transfigured. Look at the art that came from her suffering. Her agency is painted over. Her refusal, her terror, her bleeding head, all of it is reauthored as a man's creative gesture. The peach blossom fan becomes a love token, a political allegory, a masterpiece of theater. It tours. It is studied. It is revered. And Li Xiangjun? She recedes into the frame as the beautiful occasion for someone else's meaning. This is the most seductive form of blame. The others in this series were called monsters and then quietly rehabilitated. Li Xiangjun was called a saint, and in being sanctified, she was silenced. The machine did not accuse her. It honored her into disappearance. Think about how clean that is. You don't have to attack a woman to erase her. You can immortalize her. You can write a play about her blood. You can hang her suffering in a museum and charge admission. And every step of the way, the people profiting from the story are men interpreting a woman's wound. Let's name the double standard directly, because the series exists to name it. When a man fails, a court falls, a faction loses, a war is lost, the explanation migrates onto a woman. She seduced him. She distracted him. She was the soft ruin at the edge of his ambition. The blood on the fan becomes proof not of her courage but of what her presence cost the men around her. But when a woman is loyal, when Xiangjun refuses the enemy, when she bleeds rather than comply, the same culture turns her loyalty into a prop. She is praised precisely so that the men whose war she died in can feel noble about their defeat. Praise and blame are the same machine. Both relocate responsibility. Both let the actual decision-makers, Ruan de Shang, the factional court, the scholars who ate their own regime, walk away clean while a singing girl carries the meaning of the entire collapse. She is blamed for the fall and credited with the glory. Either way, she is not a person. She is a meaning assigned to her by people with power. Strip the legend away and what is left? A gifted artist in a society that refused to see her as a full human. A woman who made one defiant choice with the only tool available to her, her own body, and paid for it in blood. A person whose loyalty was real, not decorative, and whose story was taken from her the instant it became useful to men. In the play that made her famous, the ending softens her into detachment. She becomes a Taoist nun, withdraws from the world, lets the romance dissolve. Whether or not that is history, it is telling that the only safe ending the culture could imagine for a woman who had been used this thoroughly was to remove her from the story entirely. The real Xiangjun is not in the blossoms. She is in the gap between the blood and the painting, the moment before a man decided what her pain would mean. Here is why this episode is not just a costume drama. We still do exactly what Yang Longyu did to that fan. A woman is hurt in public, by violence, by a system, by a scandal, and the culture rushes to make it content. We aestheticize her suffering into a story we can consume. We turn her trauma into a character arc, a screenshot, a trending sound. We argue about what her pain means for the men and movements around her, and we forget to ask her. The tragic muse trope is the peach blossom fan in modern dress. We love a woman's wound when it makes our art, our argument, our side look more profound. The moment she stops being useful to the narrative, we move on. And the factional machine is still here too. Every online war has its Li Xiangjun, a person dragged onto the board so two sides can fight through her, then discarded when the next scandal arrives. The machine did not invent her in 1644. It just had better brushes then. So here is the line to carry out of this episode. They did not call Li Xiangjun a monster. They called her unforgettable. And that was worse, because it let everyone admire the fan without ever asking who bled for it. Next time, we meet the woman this whole series has been circling, the one whose name became a verb for ruining a kingdom, Chen Yuanyuan, and the general who raged for her alone. The ultimate wuxue. And the ultimate clue that the rage was never really about her. Subscribe, and we'll paint the last stroke.